The general returned from his campaign, and he brought back a pregnant woman. Hearing the news, I touched my own belly. Because of my slender frame. At 5 months, it was only just beginning to show. Dressed in slightly loose robes, you couldn't see any sign of pregnancy at all. 6 months ago, I married the general by imperial decree. 4 months ago, he left for war by imperial decree. Now he had returned with a woman who was 3 months pregnant. By any calculation, his affection for me had lasted just over 100 days. Well then, what was there to hesitate about? Word arrived that the general would reach the capital the next morning. That evening, I packed my personal belongings and, without a word to the old dowager, returned to my family home with my maid. Briar. Briar was a gift from my sister, in-law, a woman of few words, but steady and loyal. My parents, brother, and sister, in-law showed no blame when they saw me. Their eyes held only worry and heartache. I sat down slowly, lifted a cup of tea, and drank. In the past year, no moment had felt as peaceful as this one. Ilara. My composure calmed the air and startled my family. Ilara, you, my brother, Lord Julian, was the first to break, repeating my name. I chuckled. You may all leave, I said, dismissing the servants. I rose slowly, helped my parents to their seats, and took my sister, in-law Beatrice's hand, sitting beside her. I looked at each of them in turn. My father, my mother, my brother, my sister, in-law. Father, mother. Would you like a grandchild? Brother, Beatrice, would you like a child? 2 simple questions, yet they struck everyone present like a thunderclap. My parents shot me disapproving glances. Disappointment filled my brother's eyes, and Beatrice looked at me with a pained expression. I slowly stood up. Under their watchful eyes, I lifted my outer robe. A circular, protruding belly popped into view. Amidst their collective shock, I explained my thoughts. Not long after the general had left for the campaign, I discovered I was pregnant, but I kept it quiet. My sister, in-law, Beatrice, was the daughter of a military commander. She had grown up stationed at the border with her father, participating in dozens of battles, large and small. She only returned to the capital at 15, where she and my brother fell in love at first sight. When the emperor asked Beatrice what reward she wanted, she asked for my brother as her husband. The emperor laughed heartily and granted her wish. Beatrice was not a traditional noblewoman. Raised on the frontier, she was a skilled martial artist with a free spirit. Her fearless nature deeply fascinated me, and I adored her, seeing her as a hero. Unfortunately, after 2 years of marriage, Beatrice's belly remained empty. My grandmother grew anxious, demanding my parents find a concubine for my brother to carry on the family line. My parents were more enlightened and respected my brother's decision, but they still valued heirs and would occasionally hint that my brother should have Beatrice's health looked into, hoping for a child soon. Boy or girl, one would be enough. Me brother secretly asked a friend, an imperial physician, to check Beatrice's pulse. The physician said that her constitution had been damaged, and it was likely she would never be able to conceive. Me brother was open-minded. He felt that having Beatrice by his side was enough in this life. Whether they had children or not didn't matter. If they truly needed a child, they could adopt one. In short, he would never take another woman besides Beatrice. Beatrice was both moved and tormented by this. She loved my brother deeply and wanted to grow old with him, not wanting him to take a concubine. Yet she couldn't bear the thought of him being without children because of her. She struggled with this contradiction daily, and had recently considered divorce, a notion my brother was trying to talk her out of. My parents could only sigh, knowing the world rarely offers perfect solutions. It was around that time that I first suspected I was pregnant. After confirming it at a private clinic, the idea of giving my child to Beatrice took root. But then I hesitated, feeling it would be a disservice to the general. This was his first child, a legitimate heir. If it were a boy, he would be the legitimate firstborn son, the old dowager's first legitimate grandson. The child's importance to the general's family was undeniable. Moreover, before he left, the general had been very good to me. Emotionally, as his wife, I couldn't bear to betray him. Still, I told no one but Briar about the pregnancy. I considered announcing it many times, but each time I was about to speak, the words would change. I don't know why, but a sliver of hesitation always held me back. It was only when Briar told me that the general not only had another woman, but was bringing her back that I made my decision. Before he left, he had sworn his loyalty to me time and again, promising to love only me for the rest of his life. Each time, I was deeply moved, vowing never to fail him. But since he had broken his vow and loved another, I could fail him in return. He had a second woman, so his child could certainly have a second father. I completely concealed my pregnancy from the general's estate. I would give my child to my brother and sister-in-law. After I finished speaking, my brother's eyes widened. Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. My mother was at a loss for what to say or do. Only my father maintained a shred of composure. "Ilara," he said, "tonight, you will return to the general's estate. Your brother and I are going to the palace." He pulled my brother and left. My mother and Beatrice held me, looking me over from every angle, again and again. The next day, General Alistair Vance arrived at his estate with the pregnant woman. Before he could even prepare himself mentally for how to explain this to his family, especially to the wife he had married only 6 months prior, an imperial edict arrived from the palace. Post-war reconstruction was underway, and all industries needed to be revived. Her Majesty the Empress had selected a group of noblewomen to go to the imperial monastery to pray for the nation's prosperity for a period of 6 months. Both Beatrice and I were on the list, and so I hastily left with the eunuch who delivered the decree. Before I left, I gave the general a calm glance. In just a few months, he had grown thinner and more haggard. I also glanced at the woman beside him. Her face was pale, with a hint of a martial air, but not much beauty. Standing together, they both looked worn. The general stared at me, his eyes flickering with complex emotions. After several months apart, my belly had not grown, but my face had become rounder, making me look even more beautiful than before my marriage. I outshone the woman beside him by countless measures, but he was blind, and so I could only, on behalf of my entire family, offer my sincere congratulations. The Empress was my aunt. She arranged for Beatrice and me to have a private courtyard. Our daily task was to copy Buddhist scriptures. There were about a dozen noblewomen on the trip, each with a different duty: chanting, copying, meditating, praying. We did not interfere with one another, each completing our own tasks. Soon after, Beatrice was found to be with child and was urgently sent back to our family manor to rest. The heir's wife was pregnant. The entire estate was overjoyed. 6 months later, at my nephew's 1-month celebration, my father and brother invited many guests. The noblewoman who had been in spiritual retreat with my aunt also attended. Everyone gathered around Beatrice and the baby, offering their heartfelt blessings. Beatrice was glowing with health, and my little nephew was chubby and fair. Though still tiny, you could see he was handsome, bearing a strong resemblance to my brother, and I resemble my brother very much. I reluctantly stroked the baby's small hand and looked at my brother and Beatrice. They looked at me with gratitude. Me aunt, the Empress, always looked out for her family. She had willingly sacrificed 6 months of competing with the Emperor's favored concubine, Lady Seraphina, to help us secure the family lineage. Seeing her adorable grandnephew, her smile threatened to spill off her face. "This is a great relief to me," she said. "Himph, that woman from the Vance family thinks she can fight me. Can she win? My Oberon family has an heir. What about her Vance family?" My brother, Lord Julian Oberon, was the sole heir of our house. My husband, General Alistair Vance, was the sole heir of his. Alistair had survived several assassination attempts on the border. One was particularly dangerous. To protect that woman, his ability to father children was wounded. After treatment, he could barely perform his marital duties, but he would never have children again. This was the main reason he took the great risk of bringing her back. Originally, he had planned to keep her secretly on the border. He had developed feelings for her, but not enough to shake his home in the capital. His main purpose for returning this time was to seek further treatment for his private ailment. Bringing the woman back was to protect the child in her womb. If he truly could not have any more children, this child would be his only one. He valued lineage above all else. He could not lose his only child. These were all secrets, but they could not be hidden from my sister. In-laws network. When I heard this news, my resolve hardened. Not only would I give away the child in my belly, but I would also ensure he never saw the child in his lifetime. My aunt, parents, and sister, in-law, were all willing to help me fulfill this wish. No one wanted to see a faithless man live well. My aunt truly pitied me. Before returning to the palace, to give me more time to recover, she issued a decree extending my prayer period at the temple by 3 months. She sent a message to General Alistair, explaining that the extension was to spare me the pain of seeing the woman he brought back give birth, which might cause resentment and drive a wedge between us. No matter how much Alistair missed me, he could only swallow his words of longing. Before returning to the general's estate, I first went to my family manor to see the child. He was being raised exceptionally well. He carried the hopes of the entire Oberon family. He was everyone's little son. Since his arrival, my father, who had been considering retirement, attended court more diligently and with renewed vigor. My grandmother insisted on seeing and holding him every day, murmuring, my precious, so good, so good." Beatrice and my brother were more in love than ever. Beatrice's family also placed great importance on this child. Looking at my happy family, their lives thriving, I truly felt I could ask for nothing more. But my family didn't think so. Beatrice took my hand and told me that if I wanted a divorce, I should get one. I smiled and nodded. I returned to the general's estate. By this time, the woman had also given birth. It was a girl, thin and small, quiet and well-behaved. When I went to see her, Alistair stood right behind me. I didn't know if he was afraid I would harm the child out of jealousy, or if he wanted to comfort me after seeing her. He didn't leave my side for a moment. Seeing his cautiousness, I said, "General, do not worry. This is your child. I will not harm her." I then turned to the woman. "Concubine Thorn, you have endured much in childbirth. You must take good care of your health and the child. You need not come to pay respects to me until the child is 3. Clara Thorne gave me a grateful look. I looked at the child again. The little girl was in her arms, eyes closed, her little mouth suckling, a gesture so similar to my son's at birth. I instinctively wanted to offer some advice, but seeing me stare at the child, she grew tense, subtly pulling back, her face a mask of defense. Seeing this, I sighed. Forget it. Looking at her up close, she was even more haggard than when I first saw her, her face pale and aged. I could somewhat understand her nervousness. Her looks had faded. The child was now her most important bargaining chip. To be honest, I resented her, but not overwhelmingly. All things considered, I hated Alistair more. Before I married, I often heard stories of devoted women being betrayed. A husband would promise not to take a concubine, only to sleep with a maid or a cousin after marriage. When discovered, he wouldn't reflect on his own actions but would shift the blame to the woman, either fabricating a story about a shameless maid drugging him, or claiming he was drunk and mistook another woman for his wife. Except for a very few who divorced, most wives could only swallow their grievances and accept it. My mother once asked me, "Elara, if your husband did such a thing, what would you do?" "I'd kill them both," I said. My mother quickly replied, "We can't do that. They deserve to die, but it is not worth sacrificing yourself. Elara, remember, there are always other ways to vent your anger." Yes, one must always find a way to vent. According to my sources, Clara Thorne was also from a good family. Her father was an official in charge of a city's defense. She had practiced martial arts since childhood. After Alistair arrived, She volunteered to join the army, fighting alongside him. They saved each other's lives and developed feelings, inevitably falling into each other's arms. I didn't know how to judge it. Not being in that situation, it was difficult for me to understand such emotions. I couldn't understand either of them. Clara, from an official's family, would naturally have been well brought up. How could she knowingly approach a general who already had a wife? And the general, a man of such great reputation, knowing his wife was waiting faithfully at home, still broke his vows and responded to another woman's affection. It was as if their intelligence had been drained. Perhaps in the face of life and death, people change. The feelings born from such circumstances were different from the affection Alistair and I had cultivated in daily life. Otherwise, why the betrayal? But then I thought of my brother and Beatrice, whose love born from daily life was so strong. My heart ached with unfairness. If I hadn't secretly sent away Alistair's only son, I think I would have hated him to death. But after giving the child to my sister-in-law, watching him remain in the dark, struggling to have a son, I found I no longer cared. For a general who valued lineage more than life itself, it was hard to say which of us had betrayed the other more. Lady Seraphina, the emperor's favored concubine and Alistair's aunt, found the best imperial physicians to secretly treat him. I heard the results were not good. He needed to build up his strength for a long time just to manage a single encounter. He didn't want to waste it on Clara Thorne. Several times he came to me, his face tense, only to be turned away. I would say, "General, don't waste your efforts on me. I cannot guarantee I can conceive. Concubine Thorne has proven she can. The opportunity is precious. You should save it for her. Don't waste it." Alistair would be shamed, enraged, and unwilling to accept it. "Alara," he'd say, "I know you are angry with me for failing you, but you can't hold on to it forever. You must also consider your duties as a wife. Since you are my lawfully wedded wife, you have an obligation to bear my children." I would just smile. "General, if we are to speak of reason, please forgive my slowness. For there are two things I do not understand. Please enlighten me. First, a gentleman's promise is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. You promised to love only me, and I believed you without a doubt. Yet, a mere 3 months after our marriage, you engaged in an illicit affair with concubine Thorne. What reason is there in that? Second, the main wife has yet to bear a child, yet a concubine is already pregnant. And what reason is there in that?" Hearing this, Alistair's face would turn purple with rage, but he couldn't utter a single word in response. Knowing he was in the wrong and could do nothing to me, he could only grit his teeth and leave. He wouldn't go to Clara Thorne either. Briar told me that the general often stood outside my courtyard late at night, gazing in. She said that since his return he hadn't spent a single night in concubine Thorne's courtyard. She said this was the general showing his resolve, that he cherished me and would never fail me again. I said nothing. Whether he did or didn't, what did it matter? Was the issue between us just about Clara Thorne? Speaking of Clara, she was, after all, from an official's family and valued her dignity. If I didn't summon her, she never came to my courtyard. Rumors began to spread that the general's household was in turmoil, that the main wife was jealous and couldn't tolerate the concubine who had borne a child. The rumors weren't widespread, but they were enough to draw out the old dowager, who had devoted herself to Buddhism. Since I had married into the family, the old dowager had treated me reasonably well. Though she rarely left her prayer hall, nothing in the estate escaped her notice. She brought Alistair and Clara to me for a reconciliation. Whatever she said, I listened with my head bowed, until she said, "Concubine Thorne is also from an official family, not comparable to an ordinary girl. You should treat her like your own sister. Only when the wife and concubine are in harmony can the household be at peace, and your husband can focus on his career." I couldn't accept that. I lifted my head and stared at the sky. The old dowager's face immediately soured. "Alara," she said, "do you disagree?" In response to the dowager, I said, "I do indeed disagree with what you just said. You say that an ordinary girl cannot compare to concubine Thorne. Is that truly so? Before the general left, many ordinary girls came and went from this estate, and there were maids everywhere. So many young women had the opportunity to be near the general. But did you see any of them climb into his bed? Since concubine Thorne is from an official family, she should know the importance of her reputation. Yet, she disregarded not only her own name, but also the deep affection between the general and his new wife, and his public promise not to take a concubine. She engaged in a secret affair with him, causing a rift between husband and wife and damaging the general's reputation. How does such behavior make her superior to an ordinary girl? As my words fell, everyone fell silent as stones. If I had the heart to kill, I certainly wasn't afraid of talking back to an old woman. Disrespect be damned. The old dowager clutched her chest, gasping for air. Clara Thorne's face turned deathly white. I think my words reminded her of the dignity she was supposed to have, and her pride stung. Alistair just stared at me blankly. I bowed to the old dowager and quickly left. After that, Clara Thorne's presence in the estate diminished. Alistair didn't seek her out and rarely visited their child. She didn't fight for attention, barely leaving her courtyard, focusing solely on raising her daughter. I disliked her, but I didn't really hate her. We had a tacit understanding. I didn't bother her, and she stayed quiet. It was as if she didn't exist in the general's estate. I also tried to treat Alistair as if he didn't exist, but he was the master of the house, impossible to ignore. His feelings for me were complex. He had failed me. I hadn't demanded a divorce, which saved him face. I had also, unexpectedly, accepted the woman he brought back with relative calm. Though I gave them no special treatment, their monthly allowance was always paid on time and in full, and I made no move to harm them. For this, Alistair expressed his gratitude to others and felt even more guilty towards me. As a result, he was extremely tolerant of me, granting me many freedoms other noblewomen did not have. I could come and go from the estate as I pleased, visit the temple whenever I wished, and return to my family home at any time. I found such a life to be quite good, compared to being married to another man who, despite being good to me, would confine me to the inner courtyard. I preferred this, but others didn't see it that way. They saw me as a woman without favor, without children, a truly pitiful figure. Even Lady Seraphina, who had always looked down on me, found me so pitiful that her sympathy extended to my aunt, and she reduced her quarrels with the Empress. My aunt was able to rest, her spirits much improved. Sometimes my aunt would summon me to the palace. She pitied me and gave me gifts. Whatever she gave, I accepted cheerfully, assuring her not to worry, that I was living comfortably. She never believed me. Her face always a mask of restrained sympathy. What was there to pity? I thought. The lack of a man. How much better off were the women cooped up in the palace compared to me? My uncle, the emperor, was a good ruler but not a good husband. He balanced the court and the harem by taking the daughters of many officials as his consorts. He was not given to lust and was diligent in his duties. After fathering 3 sons, he rarely set foot in the harem again. My aunt had 2 of those sons. Lady Seraphina had one, along with 2 princesses from other consorts. There were no other children. Many women in the harem, after being favored once or twice upon entering the palace, never saw him again. How could their lives compare to my freedom? But I couldn't say that. I had to remain low. Key time passed quickly. The general's estate had only 1 illegitimate daughter, Clara's, and no other children. The old dowager somehow learned about Alistair's physical condition. As a Buddhist, she understood that children were a matter of fate and could not be forced. She not only gave up on me having a child but also stopped pressuring Clara. She devoted herself wholeheartedly to her faith. When people advised her to find more concubines for Alistair, to cast a wide net in hopes of a catch, she always shook her head and refused. In the entire general's estate, aside from Alistair, who had not yet given up hope and was searching everywhere for secret remedies, no one believed the general would have another child. As time went on, Clara Thorne began to show more life. She would often walk around the estate with her daughter. When she saw Alistair, she would gaze at him with longing. The servants were all practical people. As the mother of the general's only child, no one provoked her, and no one provoked me. In my leisure time, I fell in love with martial arts and spiritual cultivation. I found that practicing martial arts was wonderful. Before, I would constantly catch colds in the winter. Afterward, my body became much stronger, and I rarely fell ill, no matter how cold it was. My skills were mostly taught by my sister-in-law, Beatrice. They were practical, for fitness and self-defense, with no fancy moves. Most of the time, I practiced alone in the general's estate. Alistair and Clara both had martial arts skills. Seeing me practice, Alistair grew curious and would come to watch. After a few times, Clara also came to watch, though I didn't know if she was watching me or the general. It didn't matter. In any case, I astonished them both. My every move was sharp and proficient. Seeing that I didn't chase them away, they cautiously invited me. I didn't refuse. Mainly, I wanted to know if, with my current skill level, I could kill them both on my own. After being easily defeated by them, I no longer accepted their invitations to spar. Alistair had always thought my skills were just for show. Clara, every time she saw me lose, would breathe a sigh of relief, believing she still had one thing over me. Until another assassination attempt on Alistair outside the estate. I dodged attacks with ease, found my openings, and through a mix of feints and real strikes, saved Alistair several times. He was astounded. Clara, fighting alongside him, her face darkened. The one area where she thought she surpassed me had been eclipsed. Seeing her look of utter inferiority, I sincerely comforted her. As long as you are the birth mother of Iris, no one in this estate can shake your position in the general's heart. The despair in her eyes deepened. No matter how she was criticized for her behavior, she was still from an official's family and had her pride. If she had nothing of her own to attract the general, and had to rely on her child for security, like other out-of-favor women in the rear courtyards, it was a devastating blow to her. However, the reality she faced was even crueler than she imagined. Even when she tried to use her child to gain favor, Alistair wouldn't look at her. His gaze was fiery, and the moment he saw me, his eyes were filled with nothing but me. Clara Thorne aged even faster. Alistair's only daughter, Iris, grew up, as did my nephew Leo sometimes. Beatrice would bring Leo to the general's estate to visit me. Beatrice was wonderful, always encouraging Leo to spend time with me. Our bond as aunt and nephew was incredibly deep. Every time Leo came, Alistair would watch him with a doting expression. He was very good to Leo. In private, he would always tell me how strange it was that although Leo was my nephew, he felt a closer connection to him than to his own daughter. Iris, each time, a pang of sadness would hit me. The bond of blood was undeniable, but my words were as cold as a winter wind. I would say, if the general hadn't brought concubine Thorne to the battlefield that year, wouldn't we have had a child long ago? Perhaps one just like Leo? After saying this, I would look at him with undisguised regret. A cold wind would sweep through his conscience. Alistair couldn't bear it and would turn and leave, overwhelmed by guilt. Leo, however, felt no such connection to him. He was simply attached to me, calling, "Auntie, Auntie," with pure joy. In the eyes of this aunt and nephew, there was only affection for each other. A dozen years passed in a flash. Iris came of age. She was registered under my name, considered a legitimate daughter. When she was 3, Alistair proposed registering her under my name, promising I wouldn't have to worry about her upbringing, which would still be handled by Clara. As soon as I heard I wouldn't have to raise her, I immediately agreed. I had taken his son. Giving his daughter a title was a small price to pay. Alistair was diligent in Iris's education. She was raised well, a model of the capital's noblewoman. Alistair came to me, saying that Iris admired Leo and asked me to go to my family to propose marriage. I refused. Beatrice had told me long ago that her own brother had a daughter when Leo was 3, and they had been betrothed since birth. Both families were in favor of strengthening their ties. They often had the 2 little ones play together to cultivate their affection. Now, the young girl and Leo were deeply in love. The girl had a lively and cheerful personality, much like her aunt in her youth. I liked her instantly and had long considered her Leo's future wife. As for Iris, I felt nothing for her beyond basic respect. Besides, she and Leo were half siblings. I couldn't tell him the truth, so I provoked him instead. Leo has been betrothed. You only have this one daughter. Are you going to make her a concubine instead of a principal wife? Her mother pushed her way between a married couple to be a concubine. Is she to follow the same path? Alistair's pupils trembled, his voice shaking. Alara, she is your daughter too. She calls you mother. I didn't carry her for a single day, nor did I raise her for a single day. I am sorry, a name on a register does not make her my daughter. I denied, my voice low but firm. He couldn't imagine I would say such a thing, because I hadn't been cruel to Iris over the years. He thought I had tacitly accepted her as my daughter. My direct denial was something he couldn't accept. With a sob in his voice, he said, Alara, how can you say that? You have no children of your own. We are husband and wife, my child is your child. I became furious, my voice rising sharply. No, Iris was born of you and Clara Thorne. She is your and Clara Thorne's child. I agreed to have her registered under my name, but that doesn't mean I see her as my daughter. Though you and the world may see her as my daughter, I do not. In my heart, I have never acknowledged her. Besides, over all these years, I think you have seen for yourself how close Iris and I are. I turned and left, leaving Alistair alone, swaying in the wind sigh. He was a pitiful sight. Though he had lost his manly function, he was still a formidable man. How had he become so meek, especially after so many years of great contributions to the Empire, fighting countless battles, earning titles for his wife and daughter? Clara Thorne had been elevated from a mistress to a secondary consort, with high status in the household. His daughter Iris was named a countess. Only, I wanted nothing. He desperately wanted to please me, to compensate me. He wanted to request a noble title for me, but I refused. I had no interest in his merits. Each time, I took pleasure in seeing the light of hope in his eyes shatter into pieces. I hadn't renounced the title of general's wife because I loved my spiritual cultivation. My master was a great sage hidden in the mortal world. He said that Alistair and Clara were my training ground. If I could cultivate compassion in the face of their tests, I would achieve enlightenment. But I never did. The emperor who loved his political duties grew tired. He finally named his legitimate firstborn son as crown prince. Lady Seraphina's son was made a duke, and given a fiefdom in the far south. The crown prince moved into the eastern palace, and the duke went to his lands. The crown prince took on many duties, securing my aunt's position as Empress Dowager. The crown prince was very friendly towards the Oberon family. The external environment supported our family's continued glory. Leo married his childhood sweetheart, his cousin. The young couple was deeply in love. From then on, Leo was protected not only by his father's family, but also by his mother's and his wife's. I was completely at ease about our family and about him. Looking back at the general's estate, Alistair was old. Clara, never very striking, was plain in her middle age. Alistair found a promising military officer for Iris. I had no opinion, but Clara was vehemently against it. When Alistair asked why, she wouldn't say. He grew impatient, threatening to arrange the marriage without her consent if she didn't give him a reason. Only then did Clara glance at me mournfully and whisper, I don't want Iris to marry a military man. I am afraid she will encounter the same fate as you, my lady. She looked at me with apologetic eyes and continued. One day, her husband will return triumphant from a campaign and bring back a pregnant woman. Upon hearing this, Alistair's face went black. He looked at me with despair, clutched his chest, and spat out a mouthful of blood. I, on the other hand, looked at Clara with a certain appreciation. A third party with such self-awareness. Not bad at all. She sighed heavily, gave me another guilty look, and withdrew. I felt a surge of joy. I never thought I would see such a day. I was deeply grateful that I had followed my master's advice and stayed in the Vance estate, to have lived to see this day, though I never spoke of my resentment towards Alistair. The reason I stayed, besides my spiritual practice, was a faint hope. I wanted to hear a sincere apology from him. I never expected that Alistair wouldn't give it to me, but his mistress would. What a world! The mistress slapping her own face was, surprisingly, more satisfying than if I had done it myself. Enough, at this point. I had no reason to stay in the General's estate. I took the initiative to meet with Alistair. He rushed to see me, wearing the same set of clothes I had once praised him in before our wedding. The color had faded significantly. The man, too, was worn. Though his gaze was still fiery, still full of longing, there was no going back. He said, "Alara, has your anger finally subsided? You are finally willing to see me. From now on, we can be like we were before." He reached for my hand. I dodged it. He froze, looking at me with confusion. He didn't lower his hand but kept it extended towards me, wanting to step forward but not daring to. With my current skills, I could kick him far away with one foot. It ignored the fragile longing in his eyes. "Let's divorce," I said. He was stunned. It took him a long time to come back to himself. He choked out, "Ilara, is it still not enough? After more than a decade, is it still not enough? Ilara, for over 10 years, I haven't been with another woman, not a single one." "You wanted to," I thought, "but were you able?" As far as I knew, he had some ability in the first 2 years of his treatment. But afterward, he was no different from a palace eunuch. That was why the old dowager had completely given up the idea of getting him another concubine and had doted on Iris instead, which was how she became the nominal legitimate daughter of the estate. He didn't answer me directly, just kept rambling, repeating that he couldn't live without me. "Ilara, let's not divorce. Let's just live like this. You can ignore me like before, and I'll keep trying to earn your forgiveness. Let's just live like this for the rest of our lives," I said. Live like this for the rest of our lives. How dare you even think that? You had a child with another woman, and that child has grown up. Iris is old enough to be married. But what about me? How much longer will you hold me back? For over a decade, I have suffered for so many years. Can't you see that? And you still want me to live with you? Even if I swallow all my grievances today, forgive your broken vows, and choose to stay with you, what can you do? Can you give me a child this year? If not this year, then next year. If not next year, then the year after. Do I not deserve to have my own child in this lifetime? Alistair completely broke down. He squatted on the ground and sobbed. Yelling was exhausting. After shouting at him, I paid him no more mind. I returned to my courtyard and drank 2 large bowls of mung bean porridge. I said to Briar, "That was exhausting, but this time, we are truly free." Briar looked at me, her eyes and brows crinkling with a smile. The next day, Alistair presented me with the divorce papers. He said I could take my dowry, and in addition, I could take whatever I wanted from the General's estate. Briar was ecstatic, joyfully packing our things. "My lady," she said, "let's take this, and that too." Fine, I said. "Right now, everything in this courtyard, except for the General himself, is ours. We'll take it all." Hearing this, Alistair's eyes dimmed, and his posture stooped even lower. As I was leaving with my packed belongings, he whispered softly behind me, "I am sorry. I have wronged you in this life. If there is a next life, I will not fail you." I pretended not to hear. I went to the mountains to focus on my spiritual practice. My master wasn't entirely correct. Compared to the General's estate, I found it much easier to enter a state of tranquility on the mountain. Every day was spent either practicing martial arts or in meditation. The more I cultivated, the quieter my heart became, and my inner demons lessened. Tranquility breeds wisdom. Looking back on my past, it was all just cause and effect. He failed me. I failed him. Back and forth. None of it was worth much thought. But I was, after all, a mortal. When I thought of Leo, I still felt immense joy. When I was nearly 50, Leo learned the truth of his birth. He came to see me with his wife and children. Leo had not only inherited the title of Marquess, but had also become a trusted confidant of the new emperor, wielding great power. but he was a good official. A child raised in the Oberon household had a guaranteed moral character. His service was a blessing to the empire and its people. In matters of love, Leo was also good. He resembled my brother, and his heart was like my brother's, deeply loving and devoted. In this world, he was a model official and a model husband. He was excellent in every way. Stature, appearance, character, family background, and talent were all top tier. For years, he was coveted by the daughters of countless families. But like my brother, he had no maids in his bed, no concubines, no mistresses, no other woman besides his wife. Leo's wife was also a good woman, and especially healthy and fertile. She gave birth to 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls, all of them handsome and promising. Only the youngest son was a source of some concern, not because he was of poor character or lacked ability, but because this youngest son, Arthur, was a throwback. He bore a striking resemblance to Alistair, whom he had never met, not only in appearance but also in personality. The other 4 children loved literature, but he loved martial arts, constantly brandishing swords and spears. Watching the energetic Arthur, I reminded Leo to guard the truth. Well, not to disappoint the family or plunge them into crisis. He nodded. I understand, Mother. Tears instantly filled my eyes. Heaven was not without its ironies. It stirred confusion in Alistair. Iris, following her birth, Mother Clara's wish, eventually married a civil official as his principal wife. The official treated her very well. Even during her pregnancy when she couldn't serve him, he didn't take a concubine. Unfortunately, she died during a difficult childbirth. The daughter she bore, born breathless, her cries faint, also passed away within an hour. Clara, having lost her daughter and granddaughter in quick succession, couldn't bear the blow and followed them within a month. Having lost his only daughter, Alistair, now in his twilight years, nearly went mad. Old, without a wife, without a son. He could find no reason to live. He spent his days either in a state of madness or drowning in alcohol. Until a colleague mentioned offhandedly, "General Vance, isn't it strange? You have no blood relation to the Grand Secretary, Lord Oberon. Yet his youngest son looks nothing like him but is the spitting image of you. Seeing that boy is like seeing you in your youth." Those words struck Alistair like lightning. A moment of clarity. He saw a straw of hope. Without a moment's delay, he galloped to the training grounds. Seeing Arthur on the training grounds, he nearly fell from his horse. The dashing, heroic Arthur was his exact copy. His heart pounded wildly. After all, he was a general. When lucid, his mind was sharp. He began to re-examine the past, and all the suspicious points emerged. For instance, when he had just returned from a victorious campaign, a man of great merit, the royal family should have rewarded him. Why would they arrange for his wife, separated from him for so long, to go on a spiritual retreat? And how could it be such a coincidence that my sister-in-law, Beatrice, also went? After that, Beatrice gave birth to Leo. Was Leo born to Beatrice or to me, for instance? Leo was incredibly attached to me. He had thought it was just deep affection between aunt and nephew, but recalling my attitude towards Leo, it was clearly that of a mother towards her child. For instance, he always felt a sense of kinship with Leo. When he saw Leo, he couldn't look away. Was it really just because the boy was so outstanding? No, it was the pull of blood between father and son. For instance, when I hinted that if we had a child he would be like Leo, why didn't I say the child would be like someone else? I specifically mentioned Leo because Leo was our child. For instance, I was doted upon since childhood, supported not only by my father and brother but also by my aunt, the Empress. Yet I accepted his betrayal without a dramatic scene. Even when the old dowager provoked me into a great disrespect, I was quiet again soon after. It was illogical. Before he left for war, he had felt my love. I had felt his. Lovers know that if you truly love someone, you cannot calmly accept their betrayal. He knew I would be in pain if I found out about his other woman, which was why he planned to hide Clara on the border. The fact that I accepted Clara so calmly meant that I had also wronged him. We had wronged each other, and in my heart, the score was settled. That was why I was so calm. As for how I had wronged him, given that I had no entanglement with any other man, he could think of nothing else but that I had sent his son away. For instance, I not only didn't harm Clara, but I also didn't harm his only daughter. It was as if they had nothing to do with me. Logically, if I had never had a child, seeing my husband have one with another woman should have driven me mad with jealousy. But I felt nothing of the sort. That was because I had a better child, and I looked down on his and the concubine's offspring. With a better spiritual anchor, I not only looked down on his illegitimate daughter, but I also looked down on him. Ansi had thought it all through. He immediately realized that Leo was his son, his legitimate son, and all of Leo's children were his grandchildren, his legitimate grandchildren. He was not without heirs. He had a family full of them, all legitimate. He was ecstatic. He ran to the old dowager's grave and kowtowed. "Mother," he cried, "our Vance family line is not broken. I have a child, a legitimate son, secretly born to me by Alara. His name is Leo Auberon. He was raised by Alara's brother. He has grown up so well, even more accomplished than me. He is now the Emperor's most trusted Grand Secretary." Alara was angry with me, so she gave him away behind my back. I don't blame her. I was the one who failed her first. "Mother, my child is better than me. He is devoted and has only one wife but has 2 legitimate sons and 3 legitimate daughters. Mother, I have 5 grandchildren. 5. Aren't you happy? Mother, you haven't seen them. If you saw them, you would be so delighted. Especially my youngest grandson, Arthur. He looks just like me when I was young. It was through him that I realized Alara's nephew, Leo Auberon, is actually my legitimate son. Leo is perfect in every way. Except for one thing, his surname is Auberon. I must go to His Majesty and have him acknowledged. I must have them all acknowledged." Alistar, in a fit of passion, rushed to the Emperor without any plan, and demanded that Leo be recognized and returned to the Vance family. The current Emperor was not the former one, who might have been lenient with his rashness out of respect for his past merits. The new Emperor glanced at him sideways and said, "Just because you say so." Alistar was dumbfounded. He sobered up. He realized that even if his deductions were true, in the Emperor's eyes, the stability of the state and the Grand Secretary's loyal service were more important than whose son the Grand Secretary was. And in the eyes of the world, General Vance, having sought a son for years without success, had finally gone mad. Everything he was saying now was just the delusion of an old man who had lost his wife and daughter. The Emperor didn't want him to prove it, and he couldn't prove anything. He panicked. He ran to find Arthur, but Arthur had already been taken to the border for training by his uncle. Desperate, he remembered me. He struggled up the mountain to find me, begging for the truth. Seeing my youthful, girlish face, he stared in a daze. He asked me, "Alara, how is it that you look even younger than before we were married?" I retorted, "General, how is it that you have grown so old?" He said, "Alara, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Alara, I regret it so much. How could I have betrayed our vows for an outside woman? If it weren't for Clara, how happy our lives could have been. You have no idea how wonderful Leo is. By the way, Alara, I know now. Leo is our child. Alara, you are so ruthless. For so many years, watching us father and son be so close, yet never letting us acknowledge each other. Alara, I don't blame you. But can you let him take back the Vance name? If not, can Arthur take the Vance name? They are all descendants of our Vance family." I smiled. "General, my surname is Auberon, not Vance. Leo is a descendant of my Auberon family." I smiled and continued. "General, have you forgotten? When you returned from your campaign, didn't you bring a pregnant woman with you?" He was choked into silence, unable to say another word. A faithless man. What more could he possibly want? From then on, a small hut appeared at the foot of the mountain where I cultivated my spirit.